It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this July 4th, Independence Day edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Long weekend or not, I know many of you are getting some chores done. You got work to do. Maybe got some relaxation in, some camping, some different stuff like that. Hopefully it was a great one for you. And thanks a lot for being here. Really do appreciate it. Okay, let's jump into a great lineup here today on this Tuesday. For some of you that are working, some of you are holidaying, whatever you're up to, appreciate you tuning in. We got Peter Johnson here, Real Agriculture Agronomist, to discuss a number of different items. We're going to hear today from John Hurd. He is going to talk about a Prairie Nutrient Removal calculator. Jason Voogt of Field Agronomy, talking about seed safety when it comes to canola and nutrient levels. And then we've got Ken Currah from BASF on managing fungicide strategies with field variability. So a lot of stuff to discuss here today. And I should say, today's show is brought to you by Cargill's Marketsense. So what is that? Well, let me tell you, if you're having some trouble staying on top of your grain marketing, like you kind of feel like you just, maybe there's too much turmoil, you don't know enough, there's so much volatility right now, or maybe you're trying to get the work done out in the field and trying to maybe spend some time with the kids and the family, because it is a busy season during the summer, and we only get so much summer in Canada. It's a pretty short little sprint, but the market's still trading. You still got crop, maybe some old crop, likely a lot of new crop. You're trying to sort out what to do. This is where Cargill's Marketsense makes sense. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to cargillag.ca/marketsense or contact your Cargill location to set up a meeting with a local advisor today who can walk you through some of the process and how they can help you, because Cargill can help, and their Marketsense advisory service is really how they can lend that helping hand for sure. So big thanks to Cargill Marketsense for being today's show sponsor. And with Cargill Marketsense being today's show sponsor, we're going to hear from Michelle Gemmell in a product spotlight today from Cargill Marketsense as well. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can find us across all the different social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as TikTok. Some of you are on TikTok. I know it. I see it. Yes. I'm not a real TikTok person. I'm just kind of getting rolling myself personally. Like, members of the team love Instagram. It's taken me a long time. The other way you can get a hold of us is the RealAg feedback line. The number is 855-776-6147. Speaking of social media, saw a whole bunch of fantastic pasture or backyard fireworks displays. Man, some of you know how to set them off. Absolutely. And I was in Helena, Montana, for the back of last week, and we're sitting in the stands watching kids play baseball, and conversation struck up amongst some of the dads, wondering how come the fireworks in the U.S. that you buy are so much better than in Canada. Why is that a thing? That should not be. When the NAFTA, the USMCA renegotiation comes up, that's something that Canada needs to sort out. Why are our fireworks less? And not when I mean less money, I mean less like spectacular. There is a difference. Okay, let's take a break, get to some important stuff. Today's show is brought to you by Cargill Marketsense.
When it comes to your farm, you demand performance, because what goes in determines what comes out. At Pride Seeds, we deliver on performance. With best-in-class corn hybrid seed, you'll see results when it comes to premium yield in all the ways that matter. moisture, nutrition, dollars per acre, and of course, tonnage. So discover your farm's advantage, the Pride Seeds advantage. Visit your local dealer or prideseeds.com today.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Co-op AgZone Field is a digital agronomy tool designed to help optimize your operation. Through integrated layers of satellite imagery, soil maps, yield data, and more, Co-op Grow Team members use AgZone Field to provide organized, timely, in-season data, allowing you to make informed management decisions quickly and effectively. Trust your Co-op Grow Team to support your operation with AgZone Field. Contact your local co-op today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on July 4th. So I hope everybody is having themselves a great day. This is like a confusing week between Canadian and U.S. holidays, not on the same days. What is the productivity in Canada and the U.S. on a week like this? Joining us here for the first appearance in July is Peter Johnson. Pete, how's it going?
It's going awesome, and happy Independence Day to all our U.S. listeners, man. Like, it's a big holiday down there for sure.
Yeah, and our U.S. audience continues to grow, so it's great to have everybody tuning in to RealAg Radio, whether you're in Canada or the U.S. Okay, Pete, I got a question for you, okay? The last couple weeks I've been out and about and doing video shoots on farms, and a lot of the videos have been on the topic of soil health. And I've heard earthworms come up several times. Is your population of earthworms an indication of soil health?
So that's a really interesting question, Shaun, because your population, and when you say earthworms, I assume you're talking about night crawlers, the Lumbricus terrestris, the big ones, the fish worms, if you will. But there's a whole lot of other worms in the soil that are earthworms that we don't really pay attention to, the little red wigglers that you don't see much unless you stick your shovel in the ground and turn a shovel full over, and then it's like, well, what are all these guys that are 3 inches long, right? 7, 8 centimeters long. Are they baby night crawlers? And the answer is no. They're just another species of earthworm that are in the soil. But everybody, their soil health, their soil quality on the Lumbricus terrestris, the big night crawlers. And are they an indication of soil health? Probably yes. You got to be really careful because you can have awesome soil without earthworms. Earthworms are not native to North America. Those night crawlers came across from Europe. And when the European settlers first came and, took that prairie grassland in Iowa or the shortgrass prairie in Saskatchewan, started to plow that the soil health there was through the roof. And we lived off that soil health for a lot of years without earthworms. So be careful. It's not that that's the be all and end all. But if you have night crawlers, you'll get more night crawlers when you feed the night crawlers. And the night crawlers feed on the residue on top of the soil. The little red wigglers, they feed on the residue that's in the soil. They don't come up and pull that residue down. Where we have high populations of night crawlers and we grow corn in 30-inch rows and in clean tillage, I've seen those night crawlers so hungry that they would actually take the bottom leaves, the living leaves of that corn plant, and pull them down their hole to feed on them because they had nothing else to feed on. That's not a good thing. You want to have that food source, but the earthworm experts will often say, Shaun, feed them and they will come. And so if you have lots of crop residue, whether it's wheat leaves or it's a cover crop or it's canola residue, if you have lots and lots of dead residue soil surface, particularly if it's sized such that they can feed on it, then they're going to multiply. And you and I both know the more organic matter we return to the soil, the healthier that soil is going to be. So are earthworms an indication of healthy soil? I'm going to say basically the answer is yes, but there's definitely some caveats.
Yeah, so so we were in a field in Saskatchewan, and the comment was made, previously to some of the changes in our practices, we didn't have earthworms here. Now we do see more earthworms. I think that's a good sign. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, so to get to know earthworms, if you had earthworms before, you're managing the soil in a way that isn't probably the best thing to build organic matter. So the easiest way to reduce your earthworm number is multi-plow and do conventional tillage and not add any forage, no alfalfa in the rotation, no manure, because then all you're doing is taking all food source away in the fall. You moldboard plow it down. There's nothing for them to eat. They starve. And so the thing that you're doing when you moldboard plow and do all that tillage is you're destroying soil structure. You're creating a false soil structure with your tillage. It might be good for that 1 year, but you really destroy the stable eggs, and you create tillage eggs, but they don't last very well when you get that pounding rain. So to get zero earthworms, you had to do some management that was not really good long-term for soil health. If you change that management and the earthworms come back, then sure, you've changed the management and the earthworms are telling you that you're doing a better job to support their population, but it's the management change that really is the key there, not the earthworms.
Okay. The most important question here, though, best bait for your hook, worm versus leech?
Well, Shaun, I'm going to have to plead ignorance. I have gone fishing in my life, I think, 3 times, and that was with my dad way back when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and I know zero about fishing. So,
you know what? I don't have a look of shock on my face. I couldn't see you sitting still for you would cast once, maybe twice. They didn't bite, and I just don't think you could sit still for that. Is that fair?
So, that is fair, Shaun. Hey, but I'm going to change my answer. You know why? So the best bait for your hook is earthworms. 10,000%. There is no question. Leeches are useless. Only earthworms. You know why?
No. Tell me why.
Because we, as farmers, if you have lots of earthworms, then people will pay you to come in and pick earthworms from that soil, and it is one of the best cash crops you ever saw in your life. And if they use leeches, they aren't buying my earthworms. So earthworms win, hands down. Have a nice day.
Okay. Well, and who likes to handle a leech? Dealing with a squirmy worm is fine, but a leech? My grandpa always used leeches, and I just hated it. I was like, why can't we get some worms? Why are we playing around with these leeches? Hey, wheat harvest. It's in the air in southwestern Ontario. What are your thoughts on the yield projections?
So, Shaun, and winter barley harvest is here. There's a bit of winter barley to the south. We don't grow a lot of winter barley here yet, but people grow to double crop soybeans. So I haven't heard of any harvested yet, but it's ready. We know, get down around Rodney and further south than that it is harvested upon us. And Shaun, I'm almost never negative, but I was really reluctant to talk about more than an average crop until about, I think it was Thursday of last week. And Dave Hooker tweeted out a picture of the Ridgetown Performance Trials. Now, it's interesting because the previous week to that, I'd been at the Ridgetown Performance Trials on the tour, and they were standing perfectly. And they were tall. They were the best wheat that I've seen, but they were standing. So you kind of go, man, no lodging on beautiful dirt, this tall. The wheat crop, average. It's average. Last Thursday, he tweeted out a picture of wheat lodging. We had a bit of rain last week. Man, in the nitrogen overlaps, a lot of wheat. It's leaning, it's lodging. I didn't think that was going to happen this year. Poor wheat doesn't lodge. So I am a little more pumped that we might have an above average wheat crop, at least in some fields, than I was last week for sure. Wheat Pete is more positive again, and that's a good thing.
I like when Wheat Pete's positive. I don't like a grumpy Wheat Pete. Yeah. It's not the same. Not the same.
Yeah, I'm hardly ever grumpy, just saying. But,
yeah, it's very rare. I'm fully on board with you. I actually, it's maybe, I've known you for quite some time now, and I think you could only have 3 fingers maybe. It hasn't been very much.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad. It's no fun being grumpy. But I was being cautious before. I didn't want to build up expectations. I still don't want to. I mean, gosh, we did have wheat burn up from the drought. The sandy knolls. It's not going to be great. But overall, there's more wheat lodged than I expected, and not flat lodged, but just kind of the perfect. It's like, oh, look at that. It just got clean, and that they hit the nitrogen on the head, and here's hoping.
Yeah. Hey, this past Saturday, on our RealAg on the Weekend show, I played your interview with the gentleman from New Zealand, the former world record holder for wheat yield. Eric Watson. The question I wanted to ask you: what of his practices could you apply to spring wheat? And I'm thinking from a Western Canadian standpoint. Is there things that we should pull out of that discussion that would be applicable?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's one. And by the way, Shaun, it would depend on how much moisture you have always. So I got to be careful on spring wheat. But he talked a lot about using growth regulators earlier than we would typically use them in our winter wheat crop. Right? He said right at growth stage 30. Even almost growth stage 29, so it isn't quite even a growth stage 30, and he uses that growth regulator to manage his tillers and even up his tillers. And how many times in a spring wheat crop does it just drive us absolutely insane because we have all these late tillers in that spring wheat crop? And I know Western Canadian growers are, they look at upping their seeding rate, trying to get away from those late tillers. Man, when you have the right conditions, there's late tillers there, the wheat crop releases them. It just doesn't work. It works maybe to some degree, but it's never the answer that we want. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. He talked about low rates of growth regulators, not really high enough rates that you're doing a lot for lodging, a little bit, but not maybe a lot, but trying to manage tillers. And then the other thing that he talked about is getting great planting conditions, which is kind of an interesting one because I'm pushing everybody to get that spring wheat in early, and I don't care early about perfect planting conditions because that early benefit, as Brian Barris has showed, the benefit of planting early outweighs the benefit of planting into perfect soil conditions. Not true with corn, true with spring cereals, wheat, barley, and oats. So there's a balance there, but if you get later, man, making sure, like he would say, you have to get those perfect conditions if you're going to go for record yields in his environment for sure. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that still apply to spring wheat. Absolutely. The nitrogen stuff applies to spring wheat. It's still wheat. It's different, but it still applies.
Good stuff. And I encourage everybody to check out that interview with Eric Watson that Pete did for a recent Wheat School episode. You can find it simply by just going to wheatschool.com. Hey, Pete, that's all the time we have today. Enjoy the rest of your July 4th. I'm sure you're out there walking fields, doing some scouting, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks so much, Shaun. You as well. Have a great week, and looking forward to visiting again.
We'll be right back on Real Ag Radio, brought to you by Cargill's Marketsense.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
As you head out into the field this season, the Corn School's got you covered. Everything from tillage discussions, weed control info, field trial results, yield strategies, and more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Hi, I'm Bern Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Pride Seeds, BASF, and Syngenta Canada.
And welcome back to Real Ag Radio, brought to you today by Cargill Marketsense. You can find out more by going to cargillag.ca/marketsense or talk to your local Cargill representative. Lyndsey Smith did a product spotlight to catch up with Michelle Gemmell. Here's their discussion.
I've got with me Michelle Gemmell. She's the National Marketsense leader with Cargill. Michelle, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Lyndsey. Thanks for asking. Super excited to be on this show as well.
All right. Now, okay, tell me about Marketsense. What is this product?
Yeah, so Marketsense is a subscription-based service that we offer from Cargill. It's really focused on helping our farm clients make confident green marketing decisions. We find with this program, the marketing plan becomes the foundation. It involves a team of advisors who come to your farm. They work to build these plans and then help you execute on them. What we've found, too, is over the last 2 decades, we have a proven formula for success that matches the farmer's unique individual situation with our marketing insights and our portfolio of specialized grain contracts. And at the end, our goal is really to help our farm clients sleep better at night. I know, Lyndsey, it sounds a bit cliche, but we really want them to feel confident and supported so together they can continue to nourish the world.
Now, so how does this work? How would somebody, get started with Marketsense?
Okay, so Lyndsey, if you were a potential client, we would start with a visit at your farm kitchen. One of our advisors or a team would come out to meet you and really want to understand your specific needs and make sure we're a good fit for your farm. Then once we determine that, our goal would be to help you achieve the goals of your operation. If we then decided to work together, we would ground your individual situation. We would then provide market insights and strategies throughout the year to help you manage risk and maximize opportunity. One of the things that we add to our program as well are think tank sessions. We have these meetings right across the country where we create experiences for our farmers. So what we really want to do there is give them an opportunity to network with other farmers and really help them prepare for the grain marketing year to come.
So why is it important for Cargill to offer this program?
So, Lyndsey, we offer this program. We started about 20 years ago going down this path because farmers kept approaching us saying, can you give us some help with grain marketing? We know you do a great job in moving our grain. We have you as a supplier for crop inputs, but we need help in this grain marketing space. So as we looked into it and decided that that's an area we wanted to invest in, we went down a path where we had specific people assigned just to provide grain marketing services. We're the only grain company that's doing this right now, so it is definitely unique. And what we did with it over the years is we found this formula for success. We found this way of working with the farmer that could bring them the most value. So when it comes from a Cargill perspective, what we see is we can actually help more because we are a grain company. A lot of times we get asked, is that not a conflict of interest? There is no obligation to deliver grain to Cargill. What we find, though, we have a great portfolio of tools. We find that farmers will be interested in trying some of those tools, and this gives us an opportunity to support them through it as well.
So for those who might be interested in finding out more about Cargill's Marketsense program, where can they go?
Great question. So we do have a website, cargillag.ca/marketsense. Or better yet, you can visit one of our locations, our grain or crop input location that would be nearby to you, and talk to anybody there to ask to speak to one of our advisors.
All right. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Have a great day.
Thanks to Michelle Gemmell and Cargill's Marketsense for being today's show sponsor. Find out more by going to cargillag.ca/marketsense or talk to your local Cargill representative. We'll be right back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Join us for the Canadian Beef Industry Conference, August 15th to 17th at Calgary, Alberta. Spend time networking on the trade show floor, hear from keynote speakers, take in breakout sessions designed to increase profit, manage your rangeland, and navigate trends. Get up close to advanced techniques and hands-on demos, and experience bullfighting at the closing party. Proud, innovative, and loyal, we are beef. Registration is now open. Visit CanadianBeefIndustryConference.com for full details and to register.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Cargill Marketsense. If you're having trouble staying on top of your grain marketing, feel like you don't know enough, or don't have the time to invest in it, everyone's busy during the summer, Cargill can help, and our Marketsense advisory service is how. Go to cargillag.ca/marketsense or contact your Cargill location to set up a meeting with a local advisor today. Let's talk about nutrient removal. And on a recent Soil School episode, and you can find the Soil School by going to soilschool.com, it is brought to you by the Mosaic Company. Kelvin Heppner had a chance to catch up with John Hurd, who recently retired, but he's still in the game. He's not running away from us this quickly. And also, just pay attention here, because also a surprise guest. Yes, there's a surprise in this interview. Let's hear Kelvin Heppner of Real Agriculture talking to John Hurd about the new nutrient removal calculator.
Pleased to be joined now by Certified Crop Advisor. That's the title that he has chosen for himself today. He's this former soil fertility specialist with Manitoba Agriculture, also a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan. John Hurd, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Oh, well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be able to pitch this new Prairie Nutrient Removal calculator that was one of my last things I was able to be involved in here.
Yeah. So that's what we want to talk about, the new Prairie Nutrient Calculator. What is it, John? How did it come to be? How did it get developed?
Well, I guess how it came to be is that folks, myself, but then others like Don Flayton and Cindy Grant did some research reviews, and we kicked over this apple cart and said, the varieties and the production systems we're doing now probably are different enough that those 40 or 50-year-old nutrient removal values should be obsolete. And a number of the local states had been doing the same and finding that modern production systems, I don't want to give all the credit to varieties, but modern production systems with tillage, rotation, pest management, fertilization, and genetics have made that we're getting higher yields with not requiring quite the same amount of nutrients per bushel as the old numbers that we've been using.
Okay. So how do you see farmers, agronomists, extension staff using this calculator, John?
I see them using it largely in fertility planning. One is that they'll be using it as far as scaling it, as far as the nutrient removal, what's being exported as they haul grain away per bushel. Maybe even landlords will be wanting to use this to say, oh, is my farmer, how much phosphorus should he be putting on based on per bushels he's taking off in order to maintain the fertility. So I see it as a way to maintain and target fertility levels in the field.
And 12 different crops, I believe?
12 different crops, things that I've never heard of before here in Manitoba, like lentils and things like that. But for us, it's the core cereals, canola, dry beans, soybeans, and corn are the ones that Manitoba growers are probably going to most likely tune into.
Okay. And we're looking at macronutrients as well as a few micronutrients as well?
Yeah, the macronutrients, NPK and S, and I believe the micronutrients were boron, zinc, and copper were the ones that were analyzed.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So how do these numbers compare with some of the methods we used in the past to come up with understanding what a crop removed from the field?
I think we're seeing that a bunch of our crops now are meaner and leaner. And so they're producing a bushel of crop with removing less phosphorus. Our values, for example, for canola used to be about a pound of phosphorus per bushel, and now that's substantially less than that. A farmer, when they grow canola now, still need more phosphorus, but it's because the bushels are so much more, not the concentration. The concentration is actually less.
Okay. In the past, some people would have carried agronomists might have carried a card around with in their wallet.
Yes,
do you have one here?
Yeah. So in the past, this is what I could answer fairly quickly. When people would say, "Oh, what's the removal?" I would have something like this. Now there are nerds wandering around with smartphones and things like this, and they can use this app. And
what it's Marla Rickman.
Oh, I see you got your phone with you today.
Hi, what are you talking about?
Well, why don't we put this to the test? Kelvin, you ask us, make up a crop, make up a yield, and we'll see who gets back to you with the NPK and S.
Okay, so
removal.
this wheat behind us looks a little bit drought stressed. What would the yield potential be here? Maybe 50, 60 might be optimistic.
I was thinking 35.
Okay, let's be optimistic. Let's say 50 bushels an acre spring wheat. Marla's already looking it up. There you go.
I say 121N, 42, P205, 85. Oh, sorry, that's uptake. Removal.
Oh, we're talking removal here, John. Come on, removal.
Okay, 1.5 pounds per bushel of nitrogen, 0.6 of phosphate, 0.34 of potassium.
Okay, but you got to do the calculation, John. 50 bushels, removal, nitrogen, pounds per acre. You want to do the calculation for me, or do you want me to just read out my numbers?
Talk it to me.
Okay, so the new and improved nutrient removal rates for that 50 bushel spring wheat is 73 pounds per acre for N, 27 for P205, 14 for potash, 5 for sulfur, boron 0.004, copper 0.016, and zinc 0.095.
So you could stick with this method, and in fact, I will maybe work with some of the local groups here, and maybe we'll develop a wallet card for those of us that are not as nerdy.
Or an updated app.
Yeah. And I'm sure you can show the address for this app on your Real Agriculture scene. People should tune into it. It's relevant. It's prairie-based. And people say, oh, it might be more conservative. Actually, Dr. Fran Wally has built into it. It's following the same criteria that Illinois and Iowa use. It's not the average amount, but it's the 75th percentile. So it will tend to fertilize so that there's not a chance of undershooting. Mm-hmm. So it's a good, sound, relevant way to guide your fertility program.
So when you pulled out your card, though, John, you were looking at removal, I believe, not uptake. What's the difference there?
My card has both removal and uptake. And so removal is what's in the grain. Uptake is what it takes to grow that plant. And we do have those values also. They're in the final report. They're not in the app. but they're the type of thing that is often interesting to know. What's the total amount required to grow that crop? And I'll see if I can't put that in a card for well, maybe Manitoba Crop Alliance or someone like that.
I think most people have a phone these days, John.
Okay.
Right, Marla?
Absolutely. I was going to say earlier that this is my wallet now. I don't think I have room for a card in there, John. So, yeah.
Well, it's good to have both of you back together again, even though if only one of you is getting paid for doing this. But thank you both, John and Marla.
Well, thank you, and thank you for promoting this. We think it's one of the things, and it's a partnership between industry and the university to get relevant information to farmers.
All right.
John Hurd is such a treasure. Great sense of humor, great extension work. Love hearing that guy on the show. Fantastic stuff. That's a Soil School episode that you can find at realagriculture.com. Let's stay in Manitoba. And let's keep rolling, and we're going to hear now from Jason Voogt. He's with Field Agronomy, based out of Manitoba. And this is for a recent Canola School episode, which is brought to you by BASF Canada and InVigor Hybrid Canola. Kelvin talked to Jason about maybe just taking a closer look, maybe a reevaluation of seed safety when it comes to nutrient rates. So let's hear that discussion.
I'm pleased to be joined in this canola field by Jason Voogt of Field Agronomy. And Jason, we're standing in the middle of a trial here, actually looking at seed-placed fertilizer. Can you fill us in on what you're looking at with this trial and maybe some of the lessons that could be learned here?
Sounds good, Kelvin. Yeah, so what we're doing is basically looking at seed-placed fertilizer and basically looking at what a grower would typically apply in furrow with his canola seed. And through working with the Manitoba canola growers who approached us to, set up some trials with some of our growers, what we're doing is basically running a trial, just one pass down the field, where in the first 200 feet, the grower applies his standard treatments that he normally would put in furrow with the canola. And then another 200 feet with no fertilizer at all. So he's shut his in-furrow treatment completely off. And then the next 200 feet is actually 1.5 times the normal rate. So in this particular field here, what we have is growers using Micro Essentials S15 at 120 pounds per acre as a standard treatment. And so then the 1.5x treatment is now 180 pounds per acre.
Okay. And right now the crop is obviously is cabbaging and filling out, covering the ground. But what did you find when you did plant stand counts earlier in the season? Yeah,
so we were expecting to see some response, obviously, and especially with being a drier season too, or drier spring. This is a sandy soil here, and we do have treatments set up in clay as well, between single disc drill as well as hoe drill. And this is a John Deere single disc drill that we used here. And I expected some response, but what I saw here was pretty lights out. When I did plant counts, we definitely lost a lot of plants in that 1.5x treatment. When you looked at it visually, you still looked like you had a decent stand. And even with the standard treatment, it looked okay. But as soon as you had no fertilizer at all, it was very dramatic. Much, much better emergence, more even emergence as well.
Okay. So does that tell us that what we think is a standard rate is actually causing more damage to canola seed and seedlings than maybe what we think?
I would agree. Yeah, I think we're seeing that. And I mean, it's something that we've always wondered about because we have different spring conditions, right? And we don't really know what to expect, so, what we can get away with and what we can't. We know that we can maybe have more of a buffer and get away with more in a heavy clay soils with higher organic matter. But even in those conditions, we saw differences as well. So I think we need to really revisit how much we're applying, that maybe the safe rates that we are applying are still maybe too high. And that pushing it is really not helping us out at all.
Okay. I guess at this point we're counting plants. We're not necessarily looking at yield on those plants in those sections. So I guess that variable has yet to be considered. But in terms of potential, here you can certainly see a lot more ground in this section of the field than in the area where there's no fertilizer applied.
Exactly. That's right. I mean, ultimately, it would be nice to take it to yield. All we were requested to do by the Manitoba canola growers was just take plant stand counts at 3 or 4 leaf stage, do tissue and soil tests as well. And after that, that was it. And I think the reason being is we want to see what the effect is at the establishment, because that's really critical with canola. But after that, we also know that canola is very elastic plant that can recover and compensate quite a bit.
Yeah.
But why it's important to look at this early establishment is that we're always, other than this spring, dealing with cool soils, mostly wet soils, issues with flea beetles. Sometimes our canola sits in the ground for 2 weeks. Anything we can do to lessen that stress on the crop, to get it out of the ground more evenly and more uniform, is just going to help us out that much better.
Yeah, we like to blame the flea beetles, but maybe we're setting the crop back before they even have a chance to snack on it.
I think there is a possibility. I can see it here right away.
Yeah. So does this overall lead to, I guess, the idea or the thought, Jason, that we should invest in different ways of getting our fertilizer down, or looking at different ways of getting fertilizer, the nutrients into the field for our canola crop, rather than together with the seed?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, first of all, I think we can first examine how much we're applying to begin with, and maybe we can back off and still have some of that pop-up effect that we want to have for canola. But I think we also need to look at, are there other opportunities to use mid-row band systems and things like that. I don't know if really there's one fertilizer product that's safer than another. I don't think there really is. There are products like Crystal Green that are certainly would be a lot safer, but then you're not going to have that availability right away. But could be looking at something where you have blends of that with maybe another form of phosphorus. But I think the other side of it too is we do see a lot of guys that are planting their canola with a planter. They're applying their fertilizer completely separate, whether it's banded or broadcasted, fall or spring, and I can't see them not getting as good a yields as anybody else. Mm-hmm. So maybe we just need to look at different ways of and timing of when we apply it as well.
Yeah, and I guess equipment differences also make it, like in terms of seed bed utilization and the concentration of that fertilizer in a band relative to the seed, all of those factors need to be considered as well.
Yes, exactly, and I think that's a good point. So one of the treatments that we have in the clay is with a hoe drill. And even though it's not a 6-inch sweep or anything, there is a little bit more spread of that fertilizer versus a single disc. And I think that's why we're maybe not seeing as much of a difference there between the standard rate and the no fertilizer, because we're getting a little bit of distribution of that fertilizer to help it make it a little bit safer. So it's maybe looking at those type of systems as well as far as openers.
Yeah. You mentioned planters, and usually when you're planting canola, you're using a lower seeding rate. I guess the other option or another option here would be to use more canola seed, put more seed in the ground.
Yeah. Some people might not agree on that side of it because of how expensive canola seed is, but obviously I think we shouldn't have to use any more if we're managing that fertility better and how we place, because we're then going to have more seed get out of the ground as actual plants. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we really need to do that as much.
Okay, we'll take that one off the table.
Exactly.
That was Jason Voogt of Field Agronomy talking to Kelvin Heppner. You can find more discussions like that by going to canolaschool.com. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from Ken Currah of BASF. We're talking about fungicide decisions in corn with some of the field variability that is out there due to some of that dry weather. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Cargill's Marketsense.
Peter Johnson at WheatPeak, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Cargill's Marketsense. Now we're going to listen to Bern Tobin, who's out in Oxford County in Ontario, talking to Ken Currah of BASF. And Ken has some advice based on some of the work that BASF has done in regards to decisions around fungicide on your corn when there's field variability. Let's peek into the mind of Ken Currah with BASF, talking about this subject as we try to unpack it and make decisions in our field.
Ken, how's it going?
It's going great. We got a beautiful sunny day. The crops are growing.
Yep, and we've got a little bit of an uneven corn crop here, and I think that's the story of the year here. Depending on where you are, you're seeing a lot of different things.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we've endured this 7 or 8 week dry weather pattern. We've had enough rain to kind of sneak us through, but unfortunately not enough to eliminate that emergence variability that we're seeing in a lot of fields. So, variability and that uneven crop in the corn is going to be a big discussion point on this fungicide decision the next 3 weeks.
You got it. And we're going to talk about fungicides here today. But first, let's talk about, I guess, the disease pressure and what we're looking for. There's probably 3 or 4 that are on your radar.
Yeah, really in corn, I have 3 primary diseases I'm looking for. There's the gibberella ear rot, fusarium ear rots, right? So the dawn and vomitoxin potential that's there. You know, that's an old story, but nonetheless, it's on our radar, right? Because it's an expensive story if left unchecked. But from a foliar disease standpoint, the primaries I'm looking at are tar spot and northern corn leaf blight. Growers and agronomists are familiar with northern corn leaf blight. Tar spot, relatively new, reared its head here in 2021. 2022 kind of calmed off because we didn't have the environment to really blow it up again. And, you know, here we are on the cusp of when tar spot will likely be discovered in the province here in the next 10 days, let's say. And how's it going to spread? Is this 7 or 8 week weather pattern going to turn to something else?
Now, let's talk about tar spot for a moment. Typically, you know, that wet leaves, those wet conditions conducive to bringing that in. We're not seeing that yet, but you never know.
Yeah, 2021 really proved that, you know, we had those constant extended overnight leaf wetness periods well into the middle of the day. And, you know, we can talk about that for tar spot and for dawn for that matter. You know, tar spot, the market was primed up to, let's be ready to manage this for 2022. And we just didn't have those consecutive nights and days where we were over 8 hours of that overnight leaf wetness period where it extended into midday. We just didn't have that steamroll effect where we had that disease environment persist for multiple days on end like we saw in 2021.
Hey, so let's talk about this field here, and because it's pretty typical. We've got anything from 3 to 10 leaf corn in this area. How does that variability play into the fungicide decision?
And we, not just in the area, we have some fields that have 3 and 10 leaf corn in the field, right, with delayed emergence on some clay soils. So that really does factor into the decision. First and foremost, I think the overarching statement I would make is the first crop is usually the best crop to manage. Right? Generally speaking, regardless of most crops out there, the first crop is the best crop to manage. So I'm looking at, you know, those first emergers. What percentage of the field does that cover? If we're looking at like a 90-10 or a 70-30 split, somewhere in that range, really going to have to work through with your agronomist on, you know, how does this fungicide decision play into effect? There's a lot of different factors there. Whether you're looking at dawn and ear rots, what's my tolerance risk, right? Do I have my own large elevator where I can blend off a farm or two that I'm going to have emergence issues and it's going to be tough to hit the fungicide right? Am I relying on a custom operator and I'm usually late in the cycle? Then your tolerance for tar spot, because it's hard on the standability of corn, is that much less versus I have my own machine and I can go get it on October 25th if I want to. There's a lot of different factors that growers and agronomists are going to have to work through to really pin down the fungicide decision for those highly variable fields.
Yeah, and one of the keys is obviously assessing that potential. I mean, and that is determined, as you know, between that 5th leaf and that 12th leaf. And after that, we know what we have, and we've got to make a decision about, you know, how we're going to manage that crop.
And that brings us right back to 2021. Ontario record corn crop, right? And by a long shot, too. A lot of growers pulled off the best crop of their lives, and that was widespread. Niagara clays, heavier ground. You know, some areas have just pulled phenomenal yields, not what they're used to at all. And if we go back to Fred Belo's 7 wonders, the 2 he really highlights are nitrogen and environment, which is rainfall, right? Weather, rainfall, you know, and I said this when we filmed these videos 2 years ago this time, Bern, is we come off a dry June, the crop was well rooted. We had uniform corn everywhere because basically the ground had stayed mellow. All soils had stayed mellow. We can't say that this year about some of the heavier ground, poor drainage, compaction from harvest to 2021, etc. But, you know, we have a foundation for yield in those really good-looking fields that I think rivals 2021 because we've been through this weather pattern where that applied fertility hasn't been lost to the environment. And for those fields that hung in and have nice uniformity, they're driving roots deep. So they are really set up for, I think, a pretty phenomenal yield. Yeah, the variable stands, we got some more thinking to do on those. We're going to have to work through that decision a little bit more.
Hey, Ken, I want to talk a little bit more about the weather. I mean, it's been really dry. We've had a persistent drought here at different parts of it. Yeah. What happens if that weather stays dry for a lot of growers? How does that factor into their management?
Yeah, so my experience, in my days now, working with fungicide products, or even prior when I was a seed company agronomist and dealing with farmers who were trying to make that decision on, drought-stressed corn, drought-prone soils, and if this drought persists, what's my potential for ROI? A couple different factors there. First and foremost, don't lose sight of yield potential. If you're in the sand plain or on gravel bottom ground, but you've got even crop that looks like this, right? Like that's got nice color to it. It's got its legs underneath it. It's well fed. That fertility is about to jump into the plant here during its fast growth stage. We're standing right now basically in 8 or 9 leaf collar corn. It's determined its kernel round, and right now it's developing its kernel length. So the kernel slots are being set, and I always try to drive growers and agronomists back to the yield potential is set well before tassel, and it's about keeping those kernel slots alive with that plant health aspect. Secondary factor, and of course a lot of our sand plain in Ontario has proximity to Lake Erie, it's the tar spot area, so the standability discussion has to come in that as well with disease pressure. But the primary message, don't lose sight of the yield potential that's being set right here, right now.
Let's wrap this up with some fundamentals. Yep. I mean, obviously, we've got some timing, silking. We've got to make some decisions. Run us through that timing and that strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with Dawn, right? The ear molds. First and foremost, wet silks. I usually tell, applicators, if you see 3/4 of an inch of green silks available on 3/4 of the plant, it's time to get ready to go. By the time you get there, she'll be ready to go, right? Green silk window, obviously driven by heat and environment at the time. That could be a 7-day window in your area. It could be 10 days. It could be 5 if we get into a really intense heat wave. But that green silk window for dawn is pivotal. And when you do that, you're also going to hit the ideal timing for northern corn leaf blight because it's a blown-in product. We're familiar with managing that for 10, 12 years now, so that all kind of fits together. And we've also learned on the tar spot side that VTR1 timing from an ROI standpoint is best, right? Is to hit it right there at that tassel silking timing. So regardless of what product you're using, we have all-in-one jug products, all-in-one case. We have fungicide mixtures that are in the marketplace now. There's lots of choices for growers. At the end of the day, those products applied at the right time for the disease, and in particular dawn, are key, and that's really the economic best timing for the 2 key foliars in tar spot and northern as well.
Great info there from Ken Currah of BASF. Ken, longtime friend of the program and RealAgriculture.com, so it's great to have him on here again today. You can hear more great discussions like that one by going to cornschool.com. It's brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF Canada. That is cornschool.com. Today's show sponsor, big thanks to Cargill's Marketsense. It's great having them on board here. If you're having trouble staying on top of your grain marketing, feel like you don't know enough, maybe you're not confident, or you just don't have enough time to invest in it, Cargill can help. Their Marketsense advisory service is how. Go to cargillag.ca/marketsense or contact your Cargill location to set up a meeting with a local advisor today. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms as Real Agriculture. That's like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as TikTok. Or you can call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio here on July 4th, Independence Day. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.